Was that? So welcome, and thank you for joining us today. And we have the pleasure of hosting another wonderful guest, and it is Riikka Olli. And allow me maybe to say a few words about her. Riikka is a tech and e-commerce expert, nerd, with a key focus on business, circular business models. And when she was previously dedicating her career to optimizing online checkouts, Rika now focuses on it is about how to best align purpose with profit and minimizing the environmental impact by extending the life of products. And she's a she's a visionary, and behind the circular commerce platform Mendi, where that she takes care of and works with, she looks at how can Mendi extend the product lifespan through care and repair services, and Rika forges for that key strategic relationships and leads workshops on circular business model and services. So, a quick reminder before we start: we have about the format of a webinar. We will stop at 1 p.m. We have approximately 20 to 25 minutes to talk, where we will ask questions to Rika, and then where you can always ask in between some questions we'll look at to so that Rika can reply to them. And if we don't have enough time, please just ask your question in the chat of this webinar so that everyone can follow the questions and the responses that Rika will give. So welcome, Rika. How are you doing?
Great, thank you. Great to be here. Very excited about this discussion.
Excellent. So let me jump right into it. So, what inspired the creation of Mendi, and how did you navigate through its main challenges and opportunity, especially during the early stages of this platform?
Yes, and I think, for me, like you just mentioned there, I come from sort of e-commerce and tech background, and kind of the part that really was driving me was initially this, that I was very much kind of focused on building, especially timely today and on a Black Friday, that we are kind of in this endless shopping mentality, and kind of
Mhm.
really just looking for conversion, looking for seamless customer experience where we don't really kind of think beyond. And obviously, for me, when I transitioned to this more kind of entrepreneurial journey of mine, I really started to look at the other ways of doing business. So doing business in going kind of from that linear path and selling the item once, also to look at the part kind of what happens after. How can we extend the product life cycle and also do it in a way that actually then contributes to the sort of the business model and the profit that we can generate from a product and from that extended life cycle through services. So for Mendi, that was really the key kind of driver for me, because I wanted to see and want to see kind of especially brands, if we look at fashion, to be the driver to bring these services to customers. Because I guess, and we can maybe come back to this, we often debate this, that like, should we do like what is the customer's role in driving the change, and what is the kind of perhaps the business's role in impacting to that customer behavior. And at least in Mendi's case, for me, the impact quite strong. Like we have relationships with brands, so it fits very well to that sort of framework, that these services become part of the journey that we kind of as consumers we have with brands.
So, and maybe because I did an error, or I forgot to say something in my intro, Mendi focuses on is a fashion platform, correct?
I mean, essentially, yes. Most of the customers have been in fashion, but I mean, there's always also been like sort of dogs. Actually, we talked about pets before, but like pets, accessories, and things like that.
Yes.
So, and obviously, the vision there is very much applies to different consumer products.
Okay.
So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm interested to talk about the role of consumers, because we had a few sessions before, and I think we all align that we say businesses have to play a role, but consumers also have to play a big role. Now, you talked about a lot about extending the life cycle of a product, extending the life of a product. So I'm interested to know from your perspective, how would you evaluate this care and repair service also that Mendi offered in respect to its environmental and its social impact it has?
Yeah, so obviously everything really kind of starts from that extending the life. Like when we say we extend the life, we also sort of say that that product will have a like a usable time of as long as possible, and sort of that impact. Then we're kind of, at least with the care and repair services, we're kind of saying that, okay, as a business, as a society, we don't necessarily need to produce from raw materials, from new. We don't need to produce as much if we kind of keep the products in use for longer, and we kind of keep potentially having more multiple circles of use for those products. So obviously that impact sort of really essentially comes from that. So once you start extending the active use of a product, that should at least theoretically mean that, you know, you don't have to produce as much, kind of what is happening in the linear economy at the moment. So that is really the way, essentially, I would say that I would like to be able to evaluate and then also demonstrate why it is so important to shift to this kind of approach and behavior, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
So now, from a tech and e-commerce perspective, what kind of trends do you see that are going to shape the future of circular business models in retail?
Yeah, so I mean, they are like to some extent I find this quite challenging, because, you know, we sort of, it's almost like we see, as in a lot of things today in the world, it's almost like there are kind of two powers or two driving forces, because to some extent we see a lot of these, if we specifically look at fashion, we sort of see a lot of the really ultra fast fashion kind of driving, and I don't know, if we take the example of Shein, it is said that they are to really, you know, make a massive gains and profits this year, outgrowing these more traditional players on the market like H&M and Zara. But then at the same time, we're kind of seeing sort of drivers to everything that is more sustainable, circular, and kind of that from obviously partly from consumer point of view. At least there's intention there. I guess we can, and perhaps you can share a little bit of your views on this one. I know, you know, Hans-Peter, you've been in the industry, that, you know, we sort of, as consumers, we're kind of very much saying, if we are studied, we say that, yes, of course, we want the sustainability. But then in reality, if we are actually confronted with the choice between sort of not buying or buying a more sustainable product, we kind of tend to go for the sale, in a sense.
Mhm.
So it's tricky. It's very tricky. And what I wanted to say, I think there is a very powerful sort of legislation kind of pressure, whether that's kind of sustainable reporting simply, and as well as kind of, I guess, EU legislation saying that by 2030, all the products kind of being sold in EU should be repairable, sustainable, transparent. So I think there is, from maybe we can then also a little bit separate the business and the kind of individuals and consumers from, but what I at least feel from the businesses side is that there starts to be, at least in Europe, a little bit more intention. So most brands would at least have a certain level of sort of intention there, that by 2030 we are committed to a certain goals. And then obviously how that then is being translated to actual actions is still a little bit perhaps in the gray area, but the intention is there. And I guess, you know, I didn't mention, maybe we could bring the technology side of it as well. That I mean, technology wise, we see different things that can help the transition. But I think, you know, perhaps the before, or I kind of strongly feel that this kind of almost like the pressure needs to happen before we can then see what technology solutions can then enable the changes we really want to make. I think that's another complex story.
Yes.
It was. I was at a conference yesterday, a big retail conference, and I participated a talk of I think he's the CEO of Fairtrade Belgium, and he worked with Lidl before, and I think he shared one interesting thing to build a bit what you said. He said, once you offer the consumer the choice of a sustainable product or a non-sustainable product, and even if the price difference is not huge, say €1 lower, they realize because consumers need to decide within a second what to buy. Very often they go for price and they go for the non-sustainable product. And there are reasons he named, and I think that's fair. There are so many different labels. It's very difficult to judge for consumers. Is it really sustainable? Yes or no? But the most interesting thing that he said is that Lidl and now even Aldi, they decided, let's don't offer the consumer a choice, just have the sustainable product. So the consumer doesn't have to, decide, do I take the sustainable or the non-sustainable product? So I think even with that a bit in mind, so it's in the end, it's the business model that Lidl is finally chosen. So what would you say, which current and future trends, when we talk about business model innovation, what current and future trends are you seeing happening? And most importantly, how can someone prepare for that?
Yeah, and I mean, good that you sort of brought that up. But I guess, I was just reading a report yesterday. I kind of go back to what I said about the intention. So sort of that a lot of businesses have this sort of good intention that there is an objective. But yeah, this study, for example, was exactly kind of pinpointing the fact that actually we don't have many businesses that would actually commit to, for example, saying that, oh, yes, we want, 10% of our revenues coming from circular business models, or that we want, the study just mentioned a couple of Swedish companies, and there's Selfridges in the UK that said they had quite a sort of ambitious objective that by 2030, was it like 40% of their overall business should be coming from services or products that are circular. Obviously for them, they are now the manufacturer, but they need to then rely on their products being in within these objectives. And I think there's still not enough of this kind of boldness to say that this is, because once you put a measurement there publicly, at least then you can, there's something to be measured, versus kind of this, well, we aim to reduce, or we aim to kind of do something which is like, once there's no numbers, there is kind of impossible to also keep track of a matrix,
Mhm.
and exactly like you say, we're kind of, I mean, if I can say this, but I guess still being quite modest in like making those kind of bold choices to say that exactly, okay, we are committed doing this, and we as a business, we really start shaping the model to that direction, where we actually come quite strong in front of the consumer to say that, okay, since we know this is the right way to do it, we do that. And I guess, and obviously understanding that all of that is very complicated, because we haven't really sort of demonstrated that it is possible to, at the scale, sort of to transform in a short, or because I guess there's another kind of layer there as well. What can you do in a short term? What can you do in the long term? Whereas exactly the long term vision should be that okay, we cannot keep, I think it's a lot riskier to say that let's just stay as we do the things, versus at least having kind of a trajectory, or like kind of plan to transition the business model. And what I kind of, maybe what we can discuss together a bit more, but like, I think in my opinion, we start to have a lot, like in Europe, a lot of countries have startups who offer the resale, like can help businesses to come up, or support in these, especially when we talk about circular services, resale, which is one of the trends. Like resale is really sort of the part that has sort of boomed in a way that it's more or less a standardized thing. But also there's like, how can a brand or business actually own the resale channel? There are partners there that you can, like, you don't have to do it alone today. At least kind of getting your pilot up and running, like trying that, maybe communicating on those trials that you do. Because I think as consumers or as individuals, you're also looking at that, like, what are the businesses doing? And it doesn't always have to be like, I don't know, there was the Legos case, for example, where they trialed to use a certain, was it recyclable plastic for the Legos? It didn't work out, because they ended up recognizing that it was actually more sort of polluting to do the recycled plastic versus the good old Lego that lasts for tens and tens of years. So what I would hope to see is a lot more of these sort of trials, where it doesn't always have to go right in the first phase, but it should be on your agenda to try these things, or rental model, or the repair obviously is another one as well.
It's interesting because first, yesterday seems to have been a very productive day for each of us. I was talking yesterday to a board member of several fashion retailers in South Europe, and it's clear. And also, I mean, it's during the discussion, it was really clear that ESG is on the sustainability is on the agenda of the board meeting, like so many other items. The thing is, what I feel is that boards and senior executives, and I'm not talking now startups, I'm talking now the larger companies, are more focusing on being reactive, being, to make sure that ESG compliant, that things are moving into the right direction, instead of what you were also just highlighting or mentioning, Riikka, is about how can we create a vision where we are again as where the leaders, the senior leaders and the boards are sitting in the driver's seat, are not necessarily being and only pushed by ESG and SDGs, but that they are taking the circumstances in which we are and become not only creative but innovative, but also creative, because when we change business model, it affects also the revenue streams. So, and I think that there is a lot of, or the perception that I'm getting, that there is a lot of fear. What is going to happen if we slow down the sales or the sales cycle? How can we compensate? So this leads me to my next question. Business model innovation. How would you encourage your peers and also to be in a continuous business model innovation, because you were starting to talk about that.
Yeah, and I guess that was part, like, because yeah, exactly like you say, there tends to be, or like sort of, let's say, what has been encouraging, at least in my world, the startup world, that quite a lot of businesses are kind of, there's at least a positive, like you see this, that on their strategy, on their kind of 5-year, it could be hopefully will come really a 10-year plan, but these circularity, sustainability business model, it is there. But like you say, there's a little bit of fear, but what if it doesn't work out? What will happen? Will this work? Like, can we actually operate as a business? And it's a sort of a scary world at the moment.
Yes.
And obviously, I don't think there's a silver bullet, but I think the strategy, exactly like I think, with Mendi, we have been collaborating with bigger brands as well, that you sort of start trialing different things. Maybe it needs to be that you don't put all the eggs in the same basket, but you kind of start to run or try out various programs or kind of strategies that and I think this is also a kind of a moment to go to your business and sort of ask yourself, why are we here?
Yes.
Like, why are we doing this? Because I think we're more and more also going to this direction that your existence should do something good for the planet and for people. So kind of diving back into your business's existence and DNA.
Yes.
And the decisions, kind of what you then, or how you decide to take these steps, should kind of stem from there. And I always kind of, often we come to this, that it's almost like then you take your customers on a journey with you. But I think it's like,
yes.
The important thing there is that you kind of first look into your own kind of why sort of why am I doing this? Because we tend to be like, well, okay, we go with this trend, or we go with that trend, and the planning is very, very short-sighted.
Yes.
And here it's also like a great moment to anyway, we are kind of in disruptive period in many ways.
Absolutely. We got a question. Joël asked, I would like to hear more about what you think about rental models, and especially in the children fashion.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I know rental model has been a bit of a tricky one, because I think there's a lot of this, like, are we actually just doing rental? There's a lot of hassle in the processing of like sending potentially goods back and forth. And is that also to some extent fueling this consumption? Because like if you just use the rental to consume more, So is it at the end a good similar, I guess you could say, to the resale part of it? But I think it can really, I was just reading a study in Finland, at least, that there's at least those people who use rental, they feel that their overall consumption has declined because they kind of, they know that they can rely on those rental pieces, and then they keep, so I guess the secret there is just to make sure that those pieces really stay in their good quality and they stay in that use and circulation for as long as possible, in a sense. And I think kids' clothes are very suitable for rental because, you know, everyone here that is a parent knows that especially smaller kids, they grow so fast that it doesn't really, you know, the clothes are already kind of, you know, you can use them for maximum of a year or something. So for kids' clothing, and I use, for example, with my girls who are 6 and 9, I've been using for a lot of their kind of normal day-to-day wear, a service that gives me their pieces, like a certain number of pieces for 6 months, and then I go and change them. I think for kids' clothing especially, it's great. I love the topic. I know we're kind of running out of time, but I guess there for more, you know, what type of things are good for rental, I guess, from when we look at the for things for adults, where, you know, the kind of the party wear, event wear is obvious, but would you then rent your whole wardrobe? I guess in some cases it can work, but perhaps not always. I think at least some of us, you know, psychologically, you're also a little bit attached. At least I am, now that I'm kind of in this slow fashion. I love the fact that I have my mother's old clothes, and I would never kind of, those are kind of my skin, so I would not rent them out. But people are, I think, very different in this regard.
And I think the obvious products, which I think players like Decathlon, but also outdoor players that jump on it, are the more expensive tents, you know, the things that you really only use very seldomly. And you're absolutely right. There are a few small players. Children's wear is an ideal fashion product for rental model, but there you see that retailers prefer to sell it, so they get more revenue stream directly. So they are more prepared for, you know, larger items where they know people probably don't tend to buy it immediately. So they say, oh, there is an opportunity, I can rent it out. At least I get some part of the cake. So yeah, I hope to see more kids fashion rental models really coming up, because I think even in kids fashion, I think one out of 3 is or 2/3 of kids fashion is just dumped and also landing in landfills. And, you know, especially with kids fashion, as you said, when they grow, they are kind of new still when they when they grow out. So yeah, let's hope that there is a movement coming.
You know, I think that the repair and the care and repair services are, I mean, I'm just thinking about when I was working with opera singers, you know, I mean, we had these beautiful dresses and outfits, you know, it is absolutely, when you have a beautiful piece of fabric, to know that it is well taken care of and that it can accompany you for many years. It is something which is absolutely important. And also we maintain a tradition of knowing how to repair textile and fabric, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, we didn't really, from the consumption part of it, we didn't have time to touch that so much. But I think that's a really, like, I think we also like the psychological side of us kind of taking care of something that we are connected to. versus the kind of the endless drive to get something new, because I think there's so much value to be kind of supported by the fact that you can by care and repair, you can kind of keep a lot of items in use, and also by mending your old things, so you can kind of from waste to wear to some extent. That's another great way to kind of keep things in use for longer.
They call it upcycling now. You see a lot of upcycling actions. Exactly, that's good.
So we reached our half hour, the end. I mean, I would love if we can continue to keep the conversation going on. So if you have some additional questions, reach out either directly to Mendi, but also maybe do in this chat so that everyone can benefit from it. But Mendi would be, I mean, I hope so, as I know her, would be more than delighted to answer your questions. So Mendi, today I'm Riikka. Thank you so much for being our guest. And I mean, I appreciate so much the care you're bringing to this, to the business model innovation, how to make it happen. And it is something which warms up my heart, I must say, not being a non-professional of the fashion industry.
That's good. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, a lot to do in this space. And thank you. And feel free to leave a question and let's continue the discussion.
Yes. Please,
I will finish off. Anna has just commented, glad we are moving past planned obsolescence. I think that's a good.
Anna, like usual, you're finishing the discussion in a perfect and beautiful way.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. So